Hi, I'm Peter J. Ray. Welcome to Adventures in History. Today's topic is Dearest Mother, Love Ruthie. Ruth Smallshaw Ray's Letters to Her Mother, 1947, Part 29. This is the first part of the original publication, the Smallshaw Family Memories Collection, or SFMC, published on October 3rd, 1997. Letter from the editor of the SFMC. Yours truly. Greetings and best wishes to everyone. Alice, Mom, Dad, Bud, Mark, Patricia, and Rosa Chicolofa. Well, here's another fine DMLR of the SFMC. In this issue, Ruthie finished up her first year in St. Augustine, Florida, teaching school. She faced the difficult decision of whether to return to Florida for another year. Interestingly enough, her mother seemed to encourage her to come back for the second year, which Ruthie did. Although years later, Ruth seemed to regret going back for the second year in St. Augustine, always filled with nostalgia for the glory-filled years in Saskatoon. One wonders if she forgot how cold it got in Saskatoon during the winter. But it appears to have been her destiny to go back for that second year because she met Dale, her teaching assistant, who encouraged Ruth to move to Cleveland in 1948, where she was destined to meet a gregarious, funny, handsome young chemist named John S. Ray, with whom Ruthie wed in 1950 and raised 4 children, Mark, Pamela, Patricia, and Peter. The summer of 1947 was full of happenings as Ruthie studied art in Chicago and modeled there for artists, including an eccentric Latin named Juan. And then the fateful trip back to Saskatoon, meeting Don Lane there, the horrible news that Don had found another girlfriend, and the shattering breakup with Don. And then back to St. Augustine in the fall, where Johnny Ryan waited and unfortunately became more serious. And then Wade Palms entered the picture, and Ruthie had 2 boyfriends, which she managed for some time until Johnny made his exit stage left. So, enjoy this issue. I sure did. Peter J. Ray. 28 Water Street, St. Augustine, Florida, April 22nd, 1947. My dearest mother. Hi. Guess who's got the sweetest mother in the world? I have, of course. Honestly, are you ever a darling? Marion went down yesterday and got the parcel at the post office. And is it ever a lovely slip, dear? It fits fine, and thanks so much. I'll either send you the money or you can take it out of what savings I have at home, okay? I also got the note inside, and gee, dear, you should have had a couple of letters by now, and I've been figuring that I'm the one who hasn't had a letter in a long time. Marion said you may be having more misery with your teeth, and gee, but I hope not, sweet. I also got the Reader's Digest. Thanks, and the Regina newspaper. Really old Wascana Lake looks like it's making up for past years. How is your garden? Dry at all or watery too? I enjoyed reading all about it. I guess my last letter might have had anything written in it since I had taken aspirins to smarten enough to write it. The way this flu just drags everything out of you. Anyway, I should have been in good hands. Thursday, a fellow came to see me, a medic in the Navy. He came again Friday night to see if I were well enough to go to the movies. He'd just left, then Johnny came in to take me to the baseball game. He was a medic in the Army for a while when he was overseas. They had changed their minds and hadn't gone to Palatka, so I hadn't missed anything. I felt better Saturday, and Johnny and English and his girl and I went to Surfside. Also Johnny's boyfriend, Whitey, who'd flown his own plane down from Savannah, Georgia. He was in the paratroopers before. Later we decided to call Marion, and so took English and the girl back to his car and got Marion. We had quite a good time at Surfside, but you know my natural, mean disposition has to show itself so often, and I was terribly crabby, they tell me. However, Johnny and English did come over Sunday to take me to the ball game, but I was sleeping. Johnny did come over again last night to take me to the ball game in the Jeep. Remember me mentioning my first ride in one? Well, it was the mayor's, and Mr. Ryan bought it, so it's the same one. St. Augustine is winning the ball games. Do I ever wish now I could see Don playing again? We're supposed to be taking our kiddies to the beach tomorrow. Sure hope it's a nice day. Oh, the films over at Tampa were very successful. Zoe told me that they had kidded Dr. Settles and asked if he kept all the redheads in Florida under lock and key. One of my little boys is a redhead and also one little blind boy, and down here that's quite a few. The telephone strike is still on here and they're still picketing. We've got the habit of putting through emergency calls, though, a bit. It really has been terrible, though. Texas City, hasn't it? I really hope the way they've been trying to cut prices in Washington, D.C. will take effect all over the country. I could stand some food for a change without feeling it was gold-plated. You know, I was asking Zoe what she thought about the preschool course in Syracuse. It is a waste of time for here because there isn't a preschool, children under 5, but I was thinking that it might be profitable to get into a day school up north. She suggested a course at Columbia in New York City. Do you have any suggestions? Marion suggested working near here, saving and getting a car. She's thinking of not going home, but I'd sort of like to see you all. Excuse me. We get out earlier than we've expected, June 2nd, then 2 weeks to prepare for the convention, then 5 days convention. Mr. Downer said that there were rumors that Miss Inkster might be down for it. Gee, dear, it seems grim when I haven't heard from you. Sure hope you aren't ill. Sometimes I want to see you so badly, dear. Take care of yourself, and thanks again so much for the pretty white satin slip. I love you, Ruthie. 28 Water Street, St. Augustine, Florida, May 26, 1947. My dearest mother. Hi, darling. Can you believe it, that this is actually our last week of school? But this year seems to have gone quickly. Most of the children will go home Friday and Tuesday next, the 3rd. Marion takes about 75 to Tampa, and I about the same number to Pensacola on the train. We'll have our way paid and hotel there, so it'll be interesting to see some more of Florida. Everyone says mine is a pretty long trip, about 12 hours, but then they forget about the trip we took coming down, and I'm anxious to be traveling again anyway. I was glad to get your letter, dear, and that you at last got the parcel. I'd hoped that you would like it. Quite a surprise to hear you planned on going to Des Moines, Iowa, isn't it? You wrote Ohio, probably a slip. I hope you enjoy it. Is Daddy taking any holidays or coming to visit Florida next winter? Marion and I have already tentatively planned on making it to Cuba next Christmas and taking time out of school next spring to go to the Mardi Gras in New Orleans. Hope we do. I've been pretty busy the last while finishing up the kiddies' yearbooks and should get to work now. Last week was a bit rough. I got an infection in my ankle from the buckle on my sandals. So help me, I seem to get infection so easily and quickly. It started swelling and red shooting up my leg, so I went into the old routine, foot in Epsom salts and hot water, hot bread poultices, and ichthiol on it, so it's okay now. Cleared up pretty well by Friday. I was glad because I wanted to go to the school graduation dance Friday night. Most of the girls were going formal, and I guess it was nice. Marion had a good time, but I developed a tummy ache, which I hardly ever do. I have an idea sometime Ruthie's appendix will be coming out. Of course, you never can tell. Sometimes they stay like that for years. Anyway, with my ailments, I managed to finish making a black dress, and that checked dirndl skirt I started 2 years ago. Got the material in Detroit. Nothing slow about me. We went to Surfside Saturday night. Johnny and we were with a party of 10. Johnny's old girlfriend was there with another fellow who asked me if I thought Marion would go out with him. She kept asking me when school was out, and I felt like telling her not to get so eager for me to leave. Johnny said 2 or 3 people had been in a big hurry to let him know, "Did you hear Ruth is going back to Canada?" We were going to go out in the country yesterday, but it rained. It's just finished now. It rains quickly and furiously. The palm trees really take a beating, and you can barely see, yet now it's so lovely again. It was 77 degrees at 7 o'clock this morning. We went to church in the morning. I taught Sunday school at 9 o'clock. Georgia asked us over to play cards Thursday. I bought my kitties some licorice and just about finished it now, eating it myself. Marion's making a red and white dress, and she made herself the cutest red dirndl and bought a white blouse. Do you know that she's slimmer around the waist than I am? Also, my bust is 1.5 inches bigger, but my hips are 1 inch smaller. She has a very deep tan now. You asked about hair. No, I wouldn't think of having a permanent down here. My hair is much curlier, but fluffier, not very neat. Marion has given herself 2 permanents this spring, which are pretty good. The dampness makes her hair straighten. Oh, Bonnie wrote that she's going to have a baby December 10th. She and Jack were flying to Regina Saturday the 24th, and she was staying until Wednesday, the first time she's been home since she was married. They have a 3-room apartment now, and she's quitting work the end of June. Have you heard as much about the lynching of the Negroes in the North and South Carolina as we have? Quite the issue. Write soon, dear. I love you, Ruthie. P.S. Was it ever funny? You know there are a few kiddies in our building who bring me flowers every recess. I feel very popular about it. Well, one day last week, one little girl brought me some with a bobby pin attached to the stems and wanted me to put them in my hair, so of course I did. Later I'd forgotten about them, and a woman came in my room. After she left, I went to the mirror to see why the queer look at my hair, and here were these flowers dead, and it looked like just a bunch of weeds. I do love those kitties. They're so sweet. Oh, Bud, they have little radios, about 7 inches by 5 inches by 6 inches or so, for $14.50. Would you like one? Any preferences in shirts? Size? How's the studying? Love, Ruth. P.S. number 2. You know, dear, Marion is absolutely the funniest thing sewing. This is the first dress she's ever made, and she goes around swearing and crabbing. First, she couldn't thread the machine, so I did that. Then it came out, and she couldn't see the needle to rethread it. Well, after a few hours of muttering and squeaks, she finally got me to measure the length of various places. It was 3 to 4 inch difference, all too short, so I asked her what had happened. Apparently at the waist it hadn't gone right when sewing, so instead of taking it out, she'd cut it off and sewn it all bunched under in some places. I've persuaded her to try again, but she's sure having trouble by the sound of it, and people think teaching takes patience, to quote, Love, Ruth. Florida School for the Deaf and the Blind, St. Augustine, Florida, May 31st, 1947. My dearest mother, oh, sweetheart, you just couldn't realize how wonderful your last letter was. Believe me, I really appreciated you staying up to write to me, and selfishly, I'm glad no one was around to cut it any shorter. It's pretty important when I hear from you, you know. Sometimes Marion and I wonder if we really do belong to our families at all anymore. So you see, I was a pretty happy daughter to know you were thinking about me. I was sorry to hear about Mrs. West and Mrs. Cameron. Frances really will be lost now, although it may give her a chance for a change to live her own life. I'm really proud of my clever mommy and her bridge playing. I've been glad all winter that you've been playing in Mrs. Davis' club. I always used to like her and thought that you were more similar types. I read that bridge, in spite of rules, really just takes a person who can think, so I guess you're pretty smart. I think so. Conversely, your daughter is a dumb little bunny. Thursday we played poker and I lost $1.75. That which I certainly can't afford, and that's mostly why I lost. I'm not too bad at the playing part, but when we play for nickels and dimes, instead of 1 cent and 2 cents, it breaks my heart. Isn't that silly? I really shouldn't play, but Georgia has been so swell to us. They've moved into St. Augustine and have a lovely large home, half a wall of mirror in the living room, 4 bathrooms, 2 up and 2 down. They were for her daughter Dorothy Jean and her boyfriend Charlie, and Gus and Roy, who came for Marion and I, and Judge Dunham played too. Johnny came in Tuesday, and we were supposed to go to a dance with his brother. But I discovered I had to have my kiddies' books in and vocabulary checked the next morning, so he helped me or hindered me working on them. I got them done anyway. Last night we went to the school commencement, and believe me, I'd certainly like a few people in Saskatoon to have been there. It was really good. This year has been a better education than any course they could send the Saskatoon teachers to. Why they don't try a system of exchange is beyond me. Back home, I mean. Marion suggested that we'd make a pretty good superintendent now. Anyway, compared to a year ago, the commencement, well, there wasn't any comparison. Dr. Anderson, rest his soul, spoke about 3/4 of an hour of nothing. Dr. Settles said about 4 understandable sentences. The president of the University of Florida gave a very inspiring address. Education isn't the number of years at school, but being able to use your language properly, being refined, using leisure time profitably, enjoying the good things in life, music, art, literature, being able to reflect on life and converse with intelligent people, being able to do something well that is useful to the world, and having the power to talk to God and pray. The program was good, too. Having the blind department included gave them a chance to use music, and they have a pretty fair orchestra, and the deaf boys were superb. Cal is a deaf teacher and quite a guy. He had the boys put on an excellent sort of skit. He had 4 boys in graduated size covered with a bronze paint, dressed in trunks. They posed as statues like the old Greek statues. It was wonderful, muscles rippling and all. The curtain came down and each time for them to change poses. The final act was weightlifting. Each lifted a weight beginning with the smallest. The next would add a heavier weight to it. The final one couldn't lift it apparently, so they filed off. The little one came back and picked it up easily. An old act, but they did it so well. What amused me so much was a woman behind us who came in with a little girl of about 3 who was in a devil of a tantrum. The mother just couldn't control her without practically turning somersaults to please her. She turned to apologize to the woman next to her and said, "I just can't manage her. She's so hard to understand, but she's deaf, you know," in lowered tones. Then they bring 10 like that to a teacher and expect miracles. She needed 1 miracle on her little behind. Boy, am I getting to be a crabby old teacher, but you see so much of it down here. Children who rule their parents. Incidentally, I think that's really wonderful that Mrs. Crowther is going to the Tracy Clinic. I'd love to go this summer, but it's such a long way. We've arranged for her, Mrs. Tracy, to come one day at our convention, I believe. I certainly hope Davy, doesn't have to go to Saskatoon. Johnny and Cal are the two deaf men teachers, and it's wonderful to hear them talk so naturally. A man had a smart car and he didn't realize Johnny was deaf and said, "Pretty nice job." Johnny said, "You're not kidding," so naturally. I said to Cal, "I thought the bronze men were true." He said to Marion, "She thought they were the real thing." Kidding, of course, but boy, natural language. One of the little boys was doing an exercise. Draw 5 cars, color 2 green, 1 black. He pointed to the green one and said, 2 Chevs, 1 Ford. Isn't that cute? Even his parents are deaf. They've been scaring me so much about this Pensacola trip. We leave at 5:40 a.m. until 9 o'clock p.m., and they say it's a grim trip. Hot and duty with deaf, blind, and colored deaf and blind to handle about 75 of them. So if I live through it, I'll let you know. Johnny was acting out how the blind sit with their mops and brooms propped up and then go banging them sideways through the door. It's going to be a big experience. I've read the Deuteronomy, you told me to, and there's quite a lot there. I was interested in what you said and would like to hear more, dear. Bud and his boys really have a bang-up time, don't they? I certainly hope he gets those exams. I guess I'd better get cracking on these reports. Johnny's coming over, and we're going to that wedding reception and dance of his friends. Johnny just told me he's really 26 and English is 28, but English had said he was 25 or so. Johnny had said he was 2 years younger. There's a rumor that English has married the girl he's been going out with. I asked Johnny, and he said he'd heard the rumor too. Funny people. Gee, it really is going to be grim when the kiddies are all gone. The other recess, one little girl sent another to get me because a boy had pushed her. I got after him and made him say he was sorry. Then they wanted me to play farmers in the dell, so I had a big time. I really do love them so much, and you too. You've been such a wonderful mother. Love, Ruthie. To be continued. Well, that concludes today's presentation. Good luck to you with your efforts in family history. If this interests you, finding, preserving, and sharing old letters, diaries, and photographs, and interviewing elderly relatives while they're alive, you might consider checking out our website, Adventures in History with Peter J. Ray, at peterjray.com. Thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it. God bless you. Take care, and I'll see you next time.